They cut down my trees for a better view, so I shut down the only road that led to their front doors. Short version, you tell it in a bar. Somebody says, "No way you actually did that." You sip your beer and let the punchline land. Long version starts on a Tuesday, so ordinary it hurts to remember. I'm halfway through a turkey sandwich at my desk when my sister Mara calls. Mara doesn't call during work unless something's bleeding or on fire or legally complicated. She's breathing into the phone like she's been running wind in the mic, and she says, "You need to come home now." And there's that note in her voice people use when they're trying not to panic, tight, controlled, and failing. So I swallow, toss the sandwich into a napkin. Tell my boss there's a family emergency, grab my keys, and drive like I've suddenly forgotten how to obey 2-lane county speed limits. The sky is stupid bluebirds probably singing somewhere the day pretending everything is fine. And I know before I turn the last bend that something's been taken. There's a way a landscape tells you it's wrong. Like when someone peels a framed photo from a wall and you can still see the rectangle of cleaner paint where it used to be. The 6 sycamores along the east line of my property are gone. Not trimmed, not storm-torn, just missing. 40-year-old trees, thick trunks, the kind of trees that lean toward the sun like they've been overhearing our lives for decades. 3 Dad planted when I was a kid, the other 3 came later and grew together into a green wall that hid the ridge houses from staring into my backyard. Now there are 6 clean stumps, flat cuts, professional branches hauled off sawdust, mostly cleared as if someone tried to erase what they'd done and didn't finish. Mara's standing by the fence, arms folded, jaw tight. She doesn't cry or say this is awful. She just shakes her head and says, "I tried to stop them. I tried to stop them." I echo stupidly. She tells me 2 trucks pulled up that morning, company logo on the side, guys in hard hats and orange shirts. She walked over, asked what they were doing. One guy says, "Following the work order, ma'am." "Whose work order?" "Cedar Ridge Estates, HOA, they said. Cedar Ridge gated community up on the Ridgestone sign, a fountain that runs even during drought. Big houses, bigger opinions. I blink at her. "We're not in Cedar Ridge," I say. "Exactly," she replies. There's a business card tucked under my windshield wiper, Summit Tree and Land Management. My hands are steadier than I feel when I call the number. Brad answers on the second ring, cheerful like he's booking a haircut. "Summit Tree, Brad." I ask why his crew chopped my trees. Paper rustles a pause. "We had a work order from Cedar Ridge, HOA, for lot boundary clearing along the south overlook." "That's not their land," I tell him. Longer pause. "The HOA president signed off on it. He says they indicated the trees were encroaching on common property and obstructing the community view corridor." View corridor, like my trees are a bureaucratic inconvenience. I tell him the trees were planted decades before Cedar Ridge existed. Silence. "You're not part of Cedar Ridge?" he asks, almost like I've told him a joke. I hang up, standing there looking at rooftops, peeking where green used to be, sunlight glinting off oversized windows. People like their sunsets uninterrupted. Apparently some like them enough to make other folks invisible. 2 hours later, the phone rings again. Different number. Daniel Whitmore, president of the HOA, voice smooth as if he practiced empathy in the mirror. "There was some confusion," he says. "We believe the trees were on community land." "They weren't," I say. "We're reviewing the survey. If a mistake was made, we'll reimburse you for removal costs." Reimburse for cutting down 40-year-old trees. He says reasonable compensation, and my mouth tastes like sawdust. I don't tell him about the little road that cuts across my southern corner, the verbal easement Walter Jennings made with the developer 20 years ago. Walter, the retired mechanic who shook hands instead of filing papers, who died 3 years before I bought the place because verbal agreements, it turns out, don't do much for you at probate. I thank him, hang up. And that night I trace the property lines with a pen and a dim lamp, while Marlo watches me like I'm about to do something either brilliant or stupid. "Maybe both," she says. I smile because the plan is starting to feel practical. I hire a surveyor. Carl shows up in a dusty white truck, tripod, GPS. The look of a man who's watched neighbors become enemies over 3 inches of dirt, late 50s, sunburned neck, a permanent squint. He walks the boundary with me, taps metal stakes into the ground, spray paints bright orange lines that feel oddly satisfying to watch. By noon, we've got numbers. The southern corner of my property extends 15 feet past the edge of the asphalt road that people use to get to Cedar Ridge. Not a sliver, a chunk that matters. Carl shrugs like a man who bills by the hour and doesn't judge. They've been using it 5 years, he says. You planning on changing that, he asks. I look up at the ridge and say, yeah, I think I am. I call 3 people that afternoon, a fencing company, a local attorney, and the county records office. Denise Carter, lawyer Sharp, didn't laugh when I told her the story, which made me trust her, reads the deed, squints at the timeline, then says, if there's no recorded easement and no prescriptive easement of 20 years, you can restrict access. The statutory period here is 20 years. They've had 5, not enough. Block the access to an entire community, and this will escalate, she warns. I look at the 6 stumps lined like headstones. Good, I say. The fence goes up fast, maybe too fast. Steel posts sunk deep, chain link pulled taut, an industrial gate bolted across the asphalt as it crosses my property, 8 feet tall, the kind of gate you see around a construction site or an impound lot. Not subtle. The metallic click of the padlock echoes. The crew piles into their truck and leaves, and for an hour nothing happens. Then around 4:30, the first SUV rolls down, slows, idles at the gate. A silver Range Rover, then another car, then another. Luxury vehicles stack up like a high-end parking lot with nowhere to go. My phone vibrates, Daniel frantic, demanding, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I tell him the truth. "You don't have a recorded easement." I do. He threatens legal action if I don't remove the fence. I tell him I've already consulted my attorney. He hangs up. Social media does what it does. Someone in Cedar Ridge posts a photo of the gate. The neighborhood group catches fire. The county page lights up. Half call me a hero, half call me unstable. Mara scrolls through comments over takeout laughs. You're trending. Underneath the fun, something like conscience creeps in. There are families up there, kids, people who didn't order this conflict but are caught in it. I don't forget that. I also don't forget those 6 stumps and my dad's hands covered in dirt. The next morning I wake to voicemails, Daniel, the HOA vice president, and an unnamed number suggesting I'm endangering emergency services access. That one makes me pause. Denise says they can try the public safety angle, but unless there's a recorded easement or a judge's emergency order, I'm within my rights, though a court could impose temporary access while things get litigated. My leverage runs on a clock. Then the tone changes. Daniel calls, sounding less like a polished executive and more like a man with a headache. We consulted counsel. There's no recorded easement, he admits, but the association maintains the prior owner granted permission. Walter is dead. Permission granted to whom? By a handshake to ghosts. The line lands heavier than I expect. Then his voice softens. What would it take to resolve this? He asks. Not a threat, a question. I think of the empty place where the trees used to be, of the way wind used to sound through their leaves, and I list terms, replace the 6 sycamores, mature trees, professionally planted and guaranteed, a formal apology from the HOA, a recorded easement if they want continued access, and market rate compensation for past use, retroactive. I say $2,000 a month. He laughs, thinks I'm extorting him. I tell him to do the math, building a new road, environmental permits, engineering. They're not paying $24,000 a year to patch a moral failing. They're paying to make a mistake go away without consequence. He counters, we haggle, the board offers less. I stand firm. And then something I didn't expect happens. A woman appears on my porch one evening at golden hour, hair pulled back, eyes tired, not from traffic but from life. Hi, I'm Rachel Kim. I live in Cedar Ridge, she says. And she doesn't come to yell. She comes to talk. Her son has asthma. She tells me quietly. An ambulance had trouble getting through during the backlog last week. He's fine, but it scared her. She didn't know about the tree removal until the trucks were gone. She says the board makes decisions and sends emails after the fact, and the community's obsession with the Valley View became something people accepted without asking what it cost. She's not here to defend the HOA. She says what they did was wrong. But she also says maybe there's a way to fix this without burning everything down. Rachel's appearance is the twist I didn't see coming. She's a human cost in a story I'd painted black and white, and suddenly the picture is grainy and complicated. The board negotiates, the months of back and forth harden into ink, full replacement trees planted, a written apology signed by the board, an easement recorded with the county, access fees agreed upon, $1,800 a month, ultimately with legal and recording fees covered by them. Denise doesn't skip a clause. Every boundary line is precise. On the day they plant, I stand with arms crossed while crews maneuver hefty root balls into new holes, trunk girths thick enough to make the newness less jarring. Rachel stands beside me and says, "They're beautiful." Daniel shows up in work boots, hands me a folder with the apology letter. Not corporate fluff, just a clear acknowledgement. Unauthorized removal, failure to verify property. We're sorry. They cut the padlock, the gate comes down, and cars pass like they're going through a checkpoint between two countries that have just signed a treaty, slow, careful, a little wary. That's the satisfying part, not the money, not the headlines. It's that finally someone with influence had to own the mistake in public, had to hand me a piece of paper saying they were wrong, and then pay and keep paying. There's a small sweet karma in seeing a monthly check arrive on time, and in knowing the board might lose seats in the next election because people don't like being managed without a vote. The new sycamores don't sound exactly like the old ones when wind moves through them, different rhythm, younger leaves, but they're there, and when they rustle at night, I sometimes think I can almost hear the old applause my backyard used to get. I don't pretend I'm righteous. I've asked myself if I went too far, whether shutting down the only road for a whole neighborhood was an overreaction. Maybe it was. But living downhill from wealth and influence teaches you a certain invisibility. Decisions are made above you, literally and figuratively, and your boundaries get treated like suggestions. I block that road not because I hate my neighbors, but because respect shouldn't be optional. Sometimes to be seen, you have to make them feel the cost of being unseen. So tell me, if somebody cut down something that mattered to you, not just money, but memory and history, how far would you go to make it right? Would you settle quietly, take their check and move on? Or would you lock the gate and make them notice? Was I protecting my property or feeding my pride? Drop your thoughts below. I read more comments than I probably should, and I want to hear where you land on justice versus revenge. If you've got a story about defending your line, literal or otherwise, share it, because sometimes the view from the bottom of the hill is clearer than the one at the top, and I'd rather hear that than another HOA newsletter.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.